stands with Taiwan. Democrats and Republicans, House and Senate, both sides of the aisle, united in our support for Taiwan.
You're watching News Epicenter with me, Maria Shakil. The United States has sparked a geopolitical storm in Asia after the historic visit of the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, to Taiwan. Despite multiple warnings from China demanding the U.S. refrain from disrespecting the One China principle or policy by expanding diplomatic ties with Taiwan, Pelosi powered ahead with America's diplomatic agenda, promising to aid Taiwan militarily, diplomatically, and economically, highlighting support for its democracy against the autocratic rule of the Chinese regime. Not only that, Pelosi also held talks with representatives of the Tibetan government in exile during her visit to Taiwan. She is currently in Japan, which is the final stop in her Asia tour. But the dragon is breathing fire, which is turning into an inferno, quite literally. China has boosted its war rhetoric, flexing its military muscle near Taiwan. The Chinese regime is conducting live fire exercises with artillery and missile batteries and has mobilized jets and ships which have repeatedly entered Taiwan's airspace and maritime territory. China maintains the exercises are focused on training and testing the joint combat capabilities of the Chinese military. Japan has raised the diplomatic alarm after 5 Chinese missiles landed in the nation's exclusive economic zone, demanding the immediate end of this military drill. Meanwhile, the US has positioned a carrier strike group to the east of Taiwan, while South Korea has suspended flights bound for Taiwan. These military exercises are likely to continue till Pelosi heads back to the US. But the unprecedented mobilization begs the question, is this purely muscle flexing by China or signs of an impending conflict?
Live fire missile drills. Choppers and jets deployed. Long-range rockets launched. A day after Nancy Pelosi's Taiwan visit, the dragon is breathing fire. China is holding its largest ever military exercise in the seas around Taiwan. The exercises are taking place in multiple zones around Taiwan. Some are just within 20 kilometers of the island. In the border island of Pingtang, Chinese military choppers were seen flying past. China has deployed more than 100 fighter jets, bombers and other warplanes in the airspace of Taiwan. According to Taipei's defense ministry, China fired multiple ballistic missiles into waters around Taiwan. Taiwan has in turn moved howitzers and mortars close to areas where PLA is carrying out drills. Beijing has defended the drills as necessary and blamed the US for the escalation.
We are left with no choice but to take resolute measures to uphold our sovereignty and territorial integrity. And will this become a new normal? It hinges on the action of the US side and the Taiwan independence forces.
Despite China's fury, Nancy Pelosi's extraordinary stopover in Taiwan was the first high-level visit by a US official in 25 years. But by pledging support to Taiwan's democracy, a shadow has been cast on Washington's One China policy.
America stands with Taiwan. I think that whatever China was going to do, they will do in their own good time.
In a major escalation, Japan claimed 5 ballistic missiles launched by China's military landed inside Japan's exclusive economic zone for the very first time. Japan has lodged a protest, and at least a dozen Japanese and US F-15 fighter jets have taken off from Okinawa. So given the backlash that we're witnessing from China, has Pelosi's visit caused more harm than good?
And let me take that question to the panelists on News Epicenter this evening. Laura Hart is director at European-based human rights NGO, Safeguard Defenders. She is joining me from Rome. We also have Dr. Nagao, visiting fellow, Hudson Institute, joining me from Tokyo, Japan. G. Parthasarathy, former diplomat. Keone Everington is senior editor of Taiwan News. Dr. Nagao, really appreciate your time. I know it's early morning in Tokyo, and you have been kind enough to give us time. For the first time, Dr. Nagao, ballistic missiles fired by China are believed to have landed in Japan's exclusive economic zone. That's what Tokyo's defense minister said, all emanating from one visit, that is of Nancy Pelosi. How far do you think China could go?
Yes, China is very arrogant. China should learn the lesson in the history. What happened in the World War I when the German submarine attacked U.S. ship? U.S. joined the war. So if China fires a missile indiscriminately, Japan will join and U.S. will join. So real loser will be China if the U.S., Japan, and Taiwan strengthen our relation and coordinately we will fight against China.
Okay, tell me, Dr. Nagao,
China
is there a sense in Tokyo at present that all this is only because of Nancy Pelosi's visit?
Of course, China prepares such kind of the exercises for a long time because this is one of the options anytime they can use. But at the same time, currently, U.S., Japan try to support Taiwan. And as a part of the support, yes, Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan. That's true. So her visit is very courageous and based on strong will. But at the same time, the process itself has a problem, I believe. Because if Nancy Pelosi's visit is a little surprising visit, in this case, China cannot do anything. But someone reveals the information. The media reports, the White House itself leaks this information. And so after that, China thinks the U.S. attitude is a little too weak. That's why if the China rise the tension, President Biden will persuade Pelosi to cancel the visit. The China believes. That's why China declared many military reaction and rise the tension. After that, Nancy Pelosi's will is very strong. So people understand that this visit has really happened. So because China has already promised, China needs to do something. So this is demonstration, and China will be loser because when China try to demonstrate
is China really a loser here, Laura Hart? Or are you of the opinion that given the kind of military deployment that's happening from multiple sides, there could be a rethink now as to what really was this visit of a top-ranking U.S. official to Taiwan after 25 years really achieve?
Well, I think it's impossible to say. Nobody can think that, you know, the visit of one single person warrants this kind of reaction. I think, well, it's been said already before, these exercises had been announced before. There is a clear escalation. I think we're all worried about what is happening these days in the Taiwan Strait, and we see this, you know, moving more widely with the 4 or 5 missiles falling into Japan's exclusive economic zone. So I really, first of all, want to commend, the strong resolve of the Taiwanese people, also their calm, I'd say, in responding to this. And I think it's very clear who are the responsible countries and actors in this clear escalation, which really has no excuse. I mean, it's very clear that the authorities of the People's Republic of China, the Chinese Communist Party, tries to spin this in its propaganda as the fault of Nancy Pelosi, blames the US. I think nobody could actually take this seriously. It's very clear that China wants to escalate. China is escalating, and we should really refute all these kinds of propaganda, trying to put the blame on anyone. Any politician, any citizen in the world is free to travel to Taiwan if they want to. And so we cannot have Beijing telling anyone where they can or cannot go.
Visit. Absolutely.
They alone are responsible for this escalation.
Absolutely. And Everington, China is now holding its largest ever military exercises around Taiwan. Of course, as Laura rightly said, this kind of propaganda that is all linked to Nancy Pelosi's visit has to be completely dismissed. But Nancy Pelosi actually left Taipei over 24 hours ago. Is there a sense now that perhaps Taiwan could have avoided this diplomatic visit?
Well, I think maybe. I mean, it's become such a tremendous, maybe you could say disaster, really. But it's, I think Taiwan has the right to have leaders visit their country. And so Taiwan was right in doing that. I don't know that they could foresee such an intense reaction by China. I think this is beyond what hardly anyone had predicted. Yeah, I mean, I think there might be some regret, but the thing is that, as the previous speaker said, they've been building up to this sort of escalation and looking for an excuse to move to their next phase in their plans for Taiwan. And so they want this kind of tension. This is something that they are generating themselves. All of this vitriol and provocation is self-generated by China.
Okay.
And yes.
Yes. So since you say that there could be some regret, Ambassador Parthasarathy, what really explains this belligerence of China? We are seeing that only because Nancy Pelosi went to Japan, there is this reaction that has come against Japan. Should India be worried?
No, I don't think there's any reason for us to worry. We have a good relationship with Taiwan, and we manage it properly. Yes, our members of parliament go there or occasionally meet them, and it's a good relationship which will continue, and we are one of the very few in Asia who have that sort of relationship with Taiwan. Now, here I think really you must remember that Xi Jinping goes to Parliament soon. We're going to get a lifetime extension if word from Beijing is to go by. Now,
obviously, in such a situation, if the US speaker lands up in Taiwan, which is unusual, you've not had a speaker for a very long time, and there is this to China policy, but with very clear understandings between the two sides. So China, Xi Jinping used this as a good opportunity with it. He had to behave in a very macho manner. And I think by and large, there has been a lot of understanding behind the scenes between the US and China on this, that each will play his own cards. As I said, Biden could not pull back. He's already seen as a weak president, and
yes,
is in the United States. So I think what has worked out is what suits everybody. China, Xi Jinping shows his macho, artillery shelling across Taiwan, flying a fighter aircraft, and let me tell you, the analysis we have is that no way they can take on the American F-16 supplied by the United States to Taiwan. So that happens. It pleases also.
So, Ambassador Parthasarathy, are you then of the opinion that after Pelosi exits Asia, all this drill will end?
No, it will continue for another day or two. After all, Xi Jinping has to make his point to his own electorate. Taiwan emerges firm and strong that they stood. And Biden will claim that, look, she went, she made our good point, and we got our fleet deployed all around. So I think we must understand that behind the scenes in such issues, there are serious negotiations which you don't know about. I mean, I've seen it when we have been in conflict. I was in Pakistan. We were having a chat with them on what to do or what not to do. It is very normal in a situation which is escalating, which really nobody wants the situation to get out of hand, that this sort of talks will be going on behind the scenes. I'm certain the Pentagon is in touch with all the other countries, its counterparts in Taiwan and China. So I think this will continue for 2 days, at least. Heavy shelling, news of how tough Xi Jinping is, news how the Taiwanese stood up, and the Americans will go back. But as I said, in my view...
so you are foreseeing perhaps a win-win situation from all the sides.
Everybody is talking about a win-win situation. You talk to the Chinese, every second word they talk is win-win situation.
Okay. And it's also about one man's political ambition that has always been the case in history, be it Putin or here Xi Jinping. Laura, come in on this. Politically, China-Taiwan reunification is core of the CCP's political vision and internal political tussle. Xi Jinping needs to take a heroic action to silence his rivals in the party and win backing for his third presidential term later this year. So he understands what this messaging is, and that's what Ambassador Parthasarathy was highlighting. He is hopeful that perhaps it will all end in the next 2 days, and this will not really escalate to a level that what we saw in the case of invasion by Russia of Ukraine.
Yeah, obviously, we all hope it won't escalate, especially in the coming days. Again, we have to thank the responsible actions of other nations for that, including Taiwan and not China, obviously. Let's also not talk about reunification, but about annexation, which is exactly the plan that Xi Jinping has laid out several times. I also wish to highlight what was said actually yesterday or the day before by the Chinese ambassador to France, who went on public television to actually declare that, you know, after this so-called reunification, which is obviously their propaganda, they would follow re-education of the Taiwanese people. Now, we all know what this means. We've seen the re-education going on in Xinjiang. We know what's happening in Tibet. We know what's happening all over mainland China. What is happening increasingly also in Hong Kong. And I think, again, this highlights why, you know, Pelosi's visit was so important, not only because of Nancy Pelosi and her position itself, but because of the message it wanted to send, the message of standing with the people of Taiwan, of standing for freedom, of standing for democracy, of standing for human rights. So there is so much at stake, not only for Taiwan, but for the wider world. And we all need to stand up to the Chinese Communist Party, and we cannot be bullied by these sort of tactics, which is why it's so important. We don't buy into the propaganda. We don't feed it. We all remain calm as much as we can. And we take the example of the Taiwanese people who are behaving really, I think, exemplary throughout this whole crisis. And I also wish to commend actually Japan today, who remained very calm. Obviously, they made diplomatic representations, but I think that's the kind of action we're looking for from responsible nations, unlike, once again, the People's Republic of China, notwithstanding everything it tries to say to the global audiences. It's very clear who's escalating, and obviously we hope there will be soon an end to this, but I fear that that we'll at least look at some low intensity warfare from China.
Okay, Ambassador Parthasarathy,
also because
Ambassador Parthasarathy, given the propaganda war that is happening, and there has been propaganda video that was put out by Taiwan, another one by China, I'm just going to rewind in time. And the flashpoint behind the 1996 China-Taiwan missile test fire in Taipei was then Taiwan President Lee Teng-hui's visit to US in 1995 just to attend an alumni celebration at Cornell University. One may say it was completely innocuous. This was just an alumni celebration, but it became a flashpoint. And this time it is far bigger. There is a diplomatic visit, first in 25 years.
Well, let me put one thing to the favor of Taiwan. I don't think China dares to attack Taiwan. Taiwan is the world's best producer of semiconductors, which everybody loves, whether it's the Indians, the Americans, or the Chinese. So therefore, to expect China to knock off Taiwan in a military assault is, I think, cutting one's nose to spite one's face. As I said, I'm a great admirer. I've been to Taiwan several times of their semiconductor industry. I hope we can cooperate with them. So Taiwan has its assets. Let's not forget that. And China's greatest economic asset, Taiwan's today, is its semiconductor industry. Even the Americans can't manage in several places without it. So, as I said, this is really what the Chinese talk about, a win-win situation. And I think as far as Taiwan's credit goes, it makes it very clear that, okay, they may not recognize them politically, but Taiwan is a factor which India would wants to cooperate with in this field. So, as I said, as you said, win-win. Everybody, a day or two from now,
or a low-intensity war, as Laura is sensing.
Unless something unexpected happens.
Unless something unexpected. Fine enough. Everington, as Ambassador Parthasarathy was rightly pointing out, economically, Taiwan is a world leader in high-tech industry and a dominant power in semiconductor business. And Taiwan's semiconductor players even outshine the US in advanced technologies. And given that kind of economic interest that the world has in Taiwan, what kind of noise has this entire visit of Nancy Pelosi and also now the development that has happened vis-a-vis China created on ground? Because last time when I had a guest from Taipei, he gave me a sense that this is perhaps of interest to journalists outside Taipei and Taiwan. For people, it's business as usual, just another normal day.
Yes, that's exactly right. And the reason is because Taiwanese people have grown up with this their entire lives. So they deal with this kind of thing every day. And so they've become numb to the situation. And so there's very little that phases them. And but as another speaker said, they're also very resilient and smart in the way that they're dealing with this, because they know the best way to deal with this is to not overreact and give China any inkling of any excuse to take actual military action. And so that's the strategy. But yeah, everybody's going through their day as normal. I was out on the streets and restaurants were packed. People were out and about town, and you'd never know that literally there were missiles flying over Taipei at that moment. We think that at least 4 flew over Taipei. So, yeah, it's quite extraordinary how casual everybody is and very relaxed. And they're definitely inside in their subconsciously, for sure. There's definitely a lot of concern.
So there's no alarm per se, despite flights being cancelled by South Korea to Taiwan.
Right. Among Taiwanese, there's not a strong reaction, and people, it's not really much of a topic of conversation. It's more among foreigners here are more concerned because they don't have this kind of experience. And yes, news agencies and journalists from overseas, tend to be more concerned. But rightly so. I mean, this is a very serious matter.
Yes.
And it shouldn't be taken lightly at all. And so that's why we in the media are definitely covering this, because it's extremely important and highly consequential. It's just that the average Taiwanese person knows that it is beyond their control. So there's no point in them trying to get, getting worked up about it, because they know there's nothing they can really do about it, basically.
Okay. Dr. Nagao, Taiwan and South Korea, in fact, control 70% of semiconductor manufacturing globally. Given that kind of interest just about every country has in Taiwan, what is it that Japan is looking at with all the mobilization that has happened of forces? And is Japan of the opinion that there has to be a counter mobilization?
Of course, semiconductor is a vital part of the developing the new technologies. And currently, because of the strategic competition between US and China and economic sanction against Russia, so this supply chain of the semiconductor is a very vital part to develop technology as a part of competition. So that's why if China try to intervene in this supply chain, of course we need to protect it. But at the same time, these exercises will end in the August 7th, China said. So that's why this is just a temporary event. If China will end this exercise. So that's why the strategic issue will be affected
the
by
sense
this
in the
exercise.
establishment in Tokyo is that this is temporary, that this will not really be escalating into a full-blown conflict.
I think so, because China China promised to do something. China tried to demonstrate their military power, but as a preparation period, they do not have enough time to do that. That's why this exercise is just exercise, not a real war. This is just a demonstration. So this is just a training, they said. And indeed, this is a training for not only for China, but also for us, indeed. So we will strengthen our cooperation, and this is the response of us.
So then Japan actually feels that now that they have lodged protests with China through diplomatic channels, that's good enough.
Protest diplomatically is on surface, because real protest is our strengthening our cooperation.
Okay.
US, Japan, we can plan to support Taiwan based on these exercises. This exercise is not exercise only for China. We can train ourselves by using these exercises. And we can write the motivation to resist China's domination in this region. That's why we will be the winner and they are loser.
Okay, so Tokyo will be the winner and China will be the loser. That's what you're saying.
I think so.
Okay. Ambassador Parthasarathy, let me give you the final words. You got a sense all's well as far as Taipei is concerned. It's people are continuing with their lives, and the excitement about the news is largely outside, and with journalists and newsmen there, and a voice from Tokyo was certainly of similar kind. So you may very well get the assessment right.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it will be a very happy ending if we can sign a collaboration agreement with Taiwan, because we are talking of setting up a semiconductor industry in India, perhaps in Bangalore. So I look at these things economically, because these are all mature people. I mean, we may have differences with China, but it's not fair to mislead them. And at the same time, as I said, I have great admiration. And our Japanese friends are very mature. They have made their power and position primarily by economic power. And therefore, as I said, you have to look at the whole situation holistically. Nobody wants a conflict now. I mean, the Americans are broke. We're all faced with the COVID. Our budgets are running hard. Nobody wants a conflict.
All right. Ambassador Parthasarathy, really appreciate your time. Dr. Nagao, appreciate your time. Everington and Laura Hart, thank you so much. Shifting focus to debate 2. Hundreds of people are falling prey to loan apps being pushed by Chinese firms. The Enforcement Directorate has launched an investigation into these online scams where borrowers are promised quick loans and then forced to pay very high rates of interest and steep late fees. Failure to pay has led to threats from money lenders linked to these apps, including blackmail and intimidation after lenders use the social media data of clients. At least 7 people have died by suicide in the last 2 months The ED has provisionally attached bank balances of over 105 crore lying in various accounts with payment gateway accounts of around 12 non-bank financial companies. NBFCs are often called shadow banks as they function a lot like banks but with fewer regulatory controls. ED sources say fintech companies backed by Chinese funds have entered into arrangements with NBFC companies for pushing these loans. These fintech companies operated from China and Hong Kong falsely claim that they are providing technical assistance services to these NBFCs and in fact develop the apps and control the entire lending process, piggybacking on NBFC for licenses. The user base of these apps is only increasing and is a major threat to the common man. So how do we plug the legal loopholes that allow these apps to function in Indian market with impunity? Before I get the guests, here's an exclusive report on the damage these apps are causing.
Threatened, bullied, harassed, named and shamed. They borrowed quick loans to support their families, but the killer Chinese loan apps got the better of them. At least 7 suicides in the last 2 months alone. The latest is that of 17-year-old Harita Varshini from NTR district of Andhra Pradesh, who took her own life as she couldn't endure the prolonged harassment that she and her family were facing for borrowing an educational loan of 6.5 lakhs. In Hyderabad, 25-year-old Sai Arvind is still recovering from the trauma he went through last year after borrowing 15,000 rupees from multiple loan apps.
I took the money from my bank loan app, and after around 1 week or 2 weeks they started demanding me like 10 times the money I took. So I have paid them once, twice, and after that I could not pay because the amount was crossed around 1.25 lakhs. So then they started harassing me by sending my more photos to my friends, relatives, family, and then later I approached the police to solve my matter, and for around 15 to 20 days they have tortured me, my family members, everyone. They have damaged in whatever possible way they could. Respond to their calls, they will start doing all the stuff they used to add around 10 members of my contact list, and they used to send them like he is fraud, he is thief, and he has took money from a bank. No one should give money to this person.
Loans can be obtained only via 2 means, banks or NBFCs. Now these apps are no longer dependent on NBFCs. The Telangana police has identified more than 200 shell companies based in Delhi, Bengaluru and Bihar, which are dispersing the loan through current accounts. They are also masking their identity behind VPN to evade police crackdown.
Earlier they used to have a tie-up with the NBFCs. Now they don't have a tie-up with NBFCs. So what they are doing, they are creating fake fintech companies. They have contacts where earlier the people who worked in the call centers, they're continuing the contacts. The Chinese people, they're continuing the contact, and they're convincing the people here in India, and they're asking them to provide these fintech company accounts.
Unlike last time where the police could crack down on these fraudulent call centers operating in cities like Delhi, Bengaluru, Gurugram and Hyderabad, this time around it has been found that these Chinese operators are running big rackets in Nepal. They're running these call centers, hiring people who can speak Hindi to blackmail Indians back home who have borrowed money.
Local agencies in Nepal have arrested 4 Chinese nationals and cracked down on at least 3 such call centers in Kathmandu and Butwal, where they seized Indian SIM cards and laptops containing confidential details of borrowers from India. The call center agents used 2 software, NXCloud Tele and STI, through which outgoing calls couldn't be tracked back to them. Calls were also made using WhatsApp, and those who failed to repay the loans were threatened with morphed pictures and pornographic content. Some Indians trained here are now said to be operating multiple gangs in India and are currently working from home.
according to the policy of WhatsApp, it will ask for an OTP when certain number is registered on WhatsApp. If that number is shared and that OTP is shared, the WhatsApp number of the genuine user will be activated in the device of somebody else.
The scale of the investigation is enormous, even as more victims fall prey to the loan apps. Police officials say the only solution to curb this menace is more awareness among people and stricter guidelines for payment gateways.
Yeah, first of all, people should have awareness regarding these loan apps, because they are giving permissions to contacts, locations, media, and all these. They should not give permissions to such confidential information.
As Chinese masterminds continue to hide in other countries, the Enforcement Directorate has provisionally attached unaccounted bank balances to the tune of 264 crores. But that is just the tip of the iceberg of this mega scam, which has ruined hundreds of lives. With Swastika Das and video journalist Venkatesh in Hyderabad, Anisya Kumar for CNN News 18.
And joining me now, Dr. Nishikant Ojha. He is advisor, cybersecurity and a counter-terrorism expert. We also have Dr. Pawan Duggal. He is advocate of the Supreme Court and also a cyber law expert. And Ankit, he is a victim of cyber cell, the entire loan scam. He is joining me as well. Ankit is joining me from Delhi. Let me begin with you. Ankit, कैसे पता चला ये पूरा वेब ऑफ लोन्स है और आप उसमें ऑलमोस्ट घुस करके आप एक विक्टिम हो गए?
ओके, एक्चुअली मैम क्या हुआ था, मैं एक्चुअली दिल्ली में रहता हूँ मैं, और मैं प्रिपरेशन कर रहा था गवर्नमेंट जॉब्स की। तो मेरे पास थोड़ा फॉर्म्स वगैरह जैसे भरते रहते हैं, थोड़ा कंडीशंस सही नहीं होती हैं, तो मुझे किसी ने बताया कि ऑनलाइन आप लोन ले सकते हो। तो ये कुछ जो लोन वाली ऐप है, मैंने यहाँ पे अप्लाई करा, तो इन लोगों ने मेरे को स्टार्टिंग में कुछ अमाउंट मेरे को मेरे अकाउंट में ट्रांसफर करा, ठीक है, जिसमें इन्होंने मेरे से चार्जेस लिए। जो रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट था वो मोर देन 10 और 15% था, मतलब बहुत ज्यादा था। 2000 रुपीज मुझे दिए इन्होंने, मेरे से 3000 रुपीज के आसपास लिए, जिसमें इन्होंने मुझे टाइम दिया कि 7 दिन के अंदर अंदर मुझे जो अमाउंट है वो रिटर्न करना है विद इंटरेस्ट। लेकिन 7 दिन के पहले ही मैम 6 दिन भी नहीं कंप्लीट हुए थे, इनके मेरे पास मैसेजेस और मेरे पास कॉल्स आनी शुरू हुई कि आपको ये पेमेंट करनी है। मैंने डिनाई किया कि अभी मेरा 7 दिन भी कंप्लीट नहीं हुआ है। तो इन लोगों ने मेरे कॉन्टेक्ट लिस्ट में जितनी मेरी फीमेल्स, जितने भी मेरे कॉन्टेक्ट लिस्ट में ऐड है, लड़कियां, लेडीज, उनके सारे कॉन्टेक्ट निकाल के और जितने भी मेरे और कॉन्टेक्ट्स हैं सब पे इन लोगों ने फॉरवर्ड करे बहुत गंदे गंदे मैसेजेस। सबको कॉल की गई, थ्रेटनिंग की कि हाँ भाई आपको ये अमाउंट देना पड़ेगा, ये वो। मैम बहुत ज्यादा जो मेरी लाइफ थी सोशल, बहुत ज्यादा खराब की गई, बहुत ज्यादा परेशान था। मेरी न्यूड फोटोज वगैरह बना के, मतलब जो एक लेवल होता है ना, सारा लेवल इन लोगों ने क्रॉस किया। मैंने साइबर में कंप्लेन कराई दिल्ली के अंदर ही जहाँ मैं रहता हूँ। तो उसके बाद भी मुझे लगा कि जो रिजल्ट मिलना चाहिए वो रिजल्ट भी वहां से नहीं मिल पाया।
तो क्या आपको आपकी मॉब्ड फोटो सर्कुलेट हो रही थी और आपकी फीमेल फ्रेंड्स को या रिलेटिव्स को जो जिस तरह के मैसेज आ रहे थे, क्या उन लोगों ने आपको बताया कि आ रहे हैं? क्योंकि यूजुअली इस केस में वो लोग भी शायद पुलिस को इन्फॉर्म कर सकती थी।
उसमें उन लोगों ने भी पुलिस में कंप्लेन कराई और वो मेरे रिलेटिव्स थे, ठीक है, मेरे कई वो मेरे फ्रेंड्स थे, उन लोगों ने मुझे बताया। मैंने भी अपनी तरफ से मैंने कंप्लेन करी, उन लोगों ने भी कंप्लेन करी, लेकिन उसका रिजल्ट मुझे लगा कि जो मिलना चाहिए था वो उस वे में नहीं हो पाया। हालांकि आज की डेट में, क्योंकि ये इंसिडेंट मैम मेरे को 2-2.5 महीना हो गया है इस बात को, आज की डेट में कॉल्स मेरे पास आनी बंद हो गई हैं, लेकिन मुझे लगा कि हाँ जो चीजें होनी चाहिए थी वो चीजें नहीं हुई।
लेकिन अंकित, इतना जब हाई रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट था तो फिर आपने नॉर्मल बैंक से क्यों नहीं लोन लिया? आपको ये नहीं लगा कि इस ऐप के थ्रू लोन ले रहे हैं तो गलत भी हो सकता है?
मैम एक्चुअली क्या था, मैंने ना जिंदगी में पहली बार कभी लोन लिया था। मैंने इसके पहले कभी कहीं पे भी अप्लाई नहीं करा था। मुझे पहले कभी नहीं पता था कि हाँ कहाँ पे सेफर है, कहाँ पे सेफ है और क्या फ्रॉड चल रहा है। मैंने जिंदगी में पहली बार ये 2-3 ऐप हैं। एक कैश वर्ल्ड नाम था ऐप का, कैश वर्ल्ड करके गूगल प्ले पे भी है, एक पापा मनी करके है, और एक कैश लाइट करके है। मेरा पहली बार एक इंसिडेंट हुआ था मैम, मुझे नहीं पता था और मैं इनमें फंस गया। इन्होंने मेरे से मैम एक्स्ट्रा पैसे मांगे, मैंने पे भी किया इन लोगों को, इन्होंने जितना बोला मैंने पे किया। फिर दोबारा से सडनली इन लोगों ने, इनको लगा कि हाँ ये मेरे को ब्लैकमेल कर सकते हैं और मैं ब्लैकमेल के नाम पे इनको पेमेंट कर रहा हूँ, तो इन लोगों ने मेरे को डेली मेरे को बहुत हैरेस किया, बहुत ज्यादा मेरे साथ हैरेसमेंट किया गया। मैंने इन लोगों को ये भी बोला कि भाई मैं पुलिस में जाऊंगा, कंप्लेन करता हूँ, साइबर जाऊंगा, बट ये लोग डरते नहीं है मैम। इन लोगों का कहना था आप जहां मर्जी जाओ, आप जो मर्जी कंप्लेन करो, जहां मर्जी रहो, कुछ नहीं होगा।
ओके, अंकित हमारे साथ रहिए। लेट मी ब्रिंग इन डॉक्टर निशिकांत Oja. Dr. Oja, what loopholes allow these loan apps to function in the Indian market?
See, the basic thing is that what Ankit was telling, it has become now an you can say daily routine exercise which is going on. I come across many cases where people are getting victimized by these kind of activities and they are not getting a remedial measures, or not even there is a proper mechanism by which we can trace or reverse trace and find out the culprit. Cybercrime it has become as a service now. It's something like that which is there. Now the problem is that these kind of things which it's not like that the app pop up and we just install it and the exercise begin. It's basically a well-planned strategy how basically the apps needs to be proliferated in basically the Indian soil. तो उसमें जो Chinese nationals होते हैं, they are basically, in a simple layman, I will say it's a kind of a white labeling which is going on.
Okay.
So they do a masking. They even have got so much facility or so much arrangement. They can change the identity of themselves. They open the account and then they trade account with online wallets, including Paytm, cash free, and everything. So front on a curtain there is an Indian. And at the back, there is a Chinese who is basically guiding and directing that particular Indian entity to work according to that. It's a kind of a Ponzi which is going on. Means you are not able to track.
Okay,
so
Dr. Oja, if this is a Ponzi, then what roadblocks do the police face when cracking down on these loan sharks?
See, what Ankit has told, that's some of the things, challenges which is happening. अब अगर वो अगना जो malware है काइंड ऑफ एन ऐप है, अगर वो ड्रॉप बॉक्स से एडमिन 338 के थ्रू ड्रॉप कर देता है, तो देयर इज नो रिवर्स मैकेनिज्म बाय व्हिच वी कैन ट्रैक. नाउ व्हाट दे हैव डन इज these Chinese or we call it as a kind of direct handlers of the PLA which they are doing. It's something which they are using the cloud services. Cloud services is a big challenge for us. VPN को काफी हद तक कंट्रोल कर लिया गया है. गवर्नमेंट ने डायरेक्शंस दे दिए गए हैं कि दैट इफ यू आर इन इंडिया यू आर नॉट अलाउड टू यूज द VPN, बट it's impossible if I am providing a VPN services from the cloud, you cannot track me. मैं सर्वर इंडिया में नहीं लेके मैं सर्वर सिंगापुर का ले लेता हूँ और वहां से जो घोस्ट सर्वर चल रहा है उसमें मैं VPN कर सकता हूँ ये सब. लेकिन अगर आप इनका आज भी एनालिसिस करते हो तो we have come across and on the national TV, I'm telling you that we have got the evidence where the Chinese have converted their identity into an Indian entity. So अगर Indian entity बन जाता है, उसका आधार कार्ड बन जाता है, उसके बाद वो अपना बैंक अकाउंट खोल लेता है, बैंक अकाउंट खोलने के बाद वो he can do anything in the Indian soil. So it's not government is doing. वो अपना awareness कर रही है, लेकिन it is our call also. And
okay. Then in that case, because the onus is certainly on the victims in many ways, because if this is the way they are operating. Ankit, जब आपको लगा कि आप ट्रैप हो गए हैं इस लोन ऐप के थ्रू, तो फिर आपका फर्स्ट रिएक्शन क्या था कि ये और लोगों के बारे में जाने कि जिन लोगों को ये ट्रैप कर रहे हैं, आपने क्या किया फिर?
मैम, टू बी वेरी फ्रैंक, मैंने ना मेरे को डर लगता था कि मैं किससे बात करूं और क्या बोलूं, कि मेरी जो सोशल इमेज है, मेरे बारे में लोग क्या सोचते हैं. जिनके पास कॉल्स गई हैं या जा रही हैं, मैसेजेस जा रहे हैं, कई लोगों के जो मेरे पास कॉल आए, मेरे पास सडनली एक कॉल आया, तो वो मेरे जानने वाले थे, मेरे पड़ोसी है, नेबर है, तो उन्होंने मुझे बोला कि आपके नाम से आपका नाम लिखा हुआ है और आपके फोन कॉन्टेक्ट की आपके नाम से आपने सेव करे होंगे लड़कियों के नंबर. वो लड़कियों के नंबर इतने गंदे तरीके से रिप्रेजेंट करे गए हैं यहाँ पे और इतने गंदे तरीके से मैसेज आया है कि आप क्या कर रहे हो. मैंने उनको बोला, भैया मुझे इस बारे में नहीं पता था किसने करा है, क्या करा है। तब मैं समझा कि इन लोगों ने करा है। और मैम कंडीशन ये थी, मुझे बिल्कुल समझ नहीं आ रहा था। मुझे लगता था कि यार मेरी सोशल लाइफ पूरी खराब हो गई है, अब मैं क्या करूं। कई बार ऐसा लगता था कि पता नहीं कि सब खत्म हो गया है, कुछ नहीं बचा अब। फिर मेरे एक फ्रेंड से बात हुई, उन्होंने मेरे को बताया कि भाई कि ये सब चीजें मार्केट में बहुत ज्यादा चल रही हैं इस समय, बहुत सारे लोगों के साथ ये डेली बेसिस पे फ्रॉड हो रहे हैं, तो तुम टेंशन मत लो और हम लोग साइबर में चलते हैं, बातचीत करते हैं। तो हमने केस रजिस्टर करवाया मैम। पुलिस लोकल स्टेशन में गए, वहां पे रेस्पॉन्स नहीं मिला, पॉजिटिव इतना नहीं मिला। साइबर में गए, साइबर में भी हमने बहुत वेट किया, लेकिन जो रेस्पॉन्स मुझे लगता है मिलना चाहिए था वो नहीं मिला। और मैं समझता हूँ मैम ये मेरे साथ हुआ है। मेरे फ्रेंड्स हैं, उनको अगर मैं इस चीज के बारे में बताता हूँ, उनको वो भी अवेयर नहीं है। हालांकि पढ़े लिखे सब लोग हैं, सब लोग ठीक है, लेकिन वो भी इन चीजों के, क्योंकि जब होता है ना मैम, हमारे साथ पहले कभी हुआ नहीं था, जब हो जाता है तो हमें नॉलेज आती है। तो मेरे कई फ्रेंड्स हैं, उनको ये चीजें नहीं पता है। वो लोग मेरे को बोलते हैं कि भाई ऐसे भी होता है क्या, तो मैं उनको बताता हूँ कि भाई
there have been 7
बहुत ज्यादा
suicides
दिक्कतें चल रही हैं।
in 2 months because of this entire nexus which is playing out. Amit Dubey, how do the operators behind these apps set up an infrastructure to evade police?
Actually, first of all, this is a very organized system. This is not done by one or two people, but there are lots of people those are behind it, and most of these apps actually governed by the same management. So when we trace out one person, one app, these are just collection agents. When we arrest them, we get to know that actually they are working for other apps as well. So it's a very organized system, and first of all, they create a company in India. There are some CAs, they help them to register a company, and then they open an account, and then some money comes through illegal channels over here. We have identified some loopholes in the system through which they get into it, and then they are collecting money from different sources in those accounts, and then parking that money out of India. The money is actually going out of India. So this entire process involves multiple things. Developing app is normally hosted in Chinese servers, and then they use promotional infrastructure through Telegram, through Instagram, through Facebook, or even through call centers. There are some call centers running around, those are offering these loans to all those people, and they are
Then, Mr. Dubey, what red flags should users be watching out for?
See, first of all, whenever somebody asks you to install such app, you should check few things. The app should not take your permissions of your contact details, your memory, your camera, your microphone. These are 4 critical parameters or peripherals of your mobile phone, which should not be given to any app as an access, because this will be misused eventually. So this is very first thing. Second, when you install any app, you need to take care of few things, that when this app was hosted, is it 2 months old, 1 month old, or 1 year, 2 years old? How many downloads are there of that app? Whether this is just 100 or 500 downloads, or it has millions and more than that. So some authenticity should be checked first of all, and whether it is governed by some authentic company, or there is some Gmail mentioned to upload that email, or there is some website of some authentic company which is mentioned. Whether the company is listed on RBI website as an authentic NBFC. So these are few checks someone should definitely do now whenever they are going for any such loan through loan apps. I will right now recommend that please, without any such verification, never ever trust or believe on any such app, because they are mostly viruses, and they are in huge numbers. Hundreds of such apps are available. You just search on Telegram and you will find lots of such links, even on Play stores. Not many of these apps are still not removed from Play stores. They are still working over there. When I have checked it today, I've installed many of these apps today during demonstration, and I found that they are still taking your permissions of your camera, your phone book, and all other details. Though legally any such app should not be given this permission, they should be taken care of by Google itself. But they are actually bypassing all these checks, parameters, and they host it for a few months. By the time Google gets about it and they remove it,
yes. By then they have terrorized
and their job. Yeah,
they have terrorized millions in India. Let me give the final words to Ankit. Ankit, आपको इस ऐप के बारे में किसने बताया, और जब आपने डाउनलोड किया तो क्या सोच करके डाउनलोड किया था?
मैम एक्चुअली क्या था, जैसे मैं फेसबुक और यूट्यूब ये सर्फिंग करता था, ठीक है। सर्फिंग करते हुए उसमें एड्स आते हैं इन ऐप के। अब जैसे कि सर ने बताया था, मैं सुन रहा था, तो ऐप के इनके अगर उसमें जाएंगे ना, ऐप पे प्ले स्टोर पे, तो वहां पे इनके डाउनलोड्स भी मिलियंस में है। ऐसा नहीं है इनके डाउनलोड्स कम में है। और जो जेन्युइन भी ऐप है, क्योंकि ये मैंने बाद में R&D करी है, जो जेन्युइन ऐप भी है, जो NBFC से रजिस्टर्ड भी है, तो जब उनको भी इंस्टॉल हम करते हैं तो फोन के अंदर परमिशंस वो भी सारे कैमरे की, गैलरी की, कॉन्टेक्ट्स की वो भी मांगते हैं। और मैम ये जो ऐप है, जितनी भी ऐप है, मेन हमें लगता है कि जैसे सिस्टम है, सिस्टम इन द सेंस कि भाई हमने जहाँ पे कंप्लेन करी कि वहां पे अगर हम कंप्लेन कर रहे हैं या जो हमें सोल्यूशन जहां से मिलने वाला है, मेन मुझे जो लगता है, मेरा ओपिनियन ये है कि उन लोगों का कहना ये है कि भाई ये जो एप्लीकेशंस हैं, ऐप है, ये यहाँ से ऑपरेट नहीं हो रही हैं। बट मैम इंडिया के नंबर से सारे, ठीक है, ये फोन भी व्हाट्सएप पे भी यूज कर रहे हैं, यानी फोन ट्रैक हो सकते हैं, बैंक अकाउंट सारे इंडिया के हैं, तो मैम ये ट्रैक क्यों नहीं हो सकते फिर?
That's right.
हमारा सिस्टम क्या सच में
And that's the reason why the agencies have to get into it to ensure that there are less victims like Ankit, and in future there are several who are far more careful. Thank you so much for joining us, Amit Dubey, Dr. Oja and Ankit. We're slipping into a short break ahead of the 75th Independence Day. We get you the Tiranga anthem that is making waves on social media, featuring celebrities from all walks of life, appealing for national unity. That is coming up right after a very short break. Stay with us.
घर घर तिरंगा, हर घर तिरंगा, घर घर तिरंगा।